Hello and welcome. You're viewing the Citizens Journalist podcast, Mesa County Compass, that brings you the news that you can use from a different point of view. I'm Ruth.
I'm Lisa.
And together we are Mesa County Compass. Our goal is to create an informed, current, active citizenry armed with the facts. We will be covering what's new to you, what it means to you, what you can do about it, and provide you access to the decision makers when we can. Welcome to Mesa County Compass. This afternoon we have Mr. Steve Varela, who is running for Congressional District number 3. We call it CD3 for an acronym. And welcome, Steve, and give us a little bit about yourself, a little bit of your background.
Oh, yeah, no, definitely. I appreciate it. So I'm Steve Varela. I'm running for Congressional District 3. Also, I'm on the Colorado State Board of Education for Congressional District 3. I'm a veteran. I'm a husband. I'm a father. I served 2 tours in Operation Iraq Freedom. When I came back, I worked for the Department of Veterans Affairs to help our veterans in our community, to create outreach and do many things to get them back involved in our community and be successful.
Okay. And so you have 4 kids, right?
Yes, ma'am.
What are their ages?
So that's funny you asked me that because my oldest is 15. Then I go by grades after that. I got an 8th grader, a 4th grader, and a 2nd grader. Now, if my wife was here, she could answer that for me.
Yeah. They know the exact ages and birth dates.
She does, exactly. I don't know how she does it so everybody always goes, how old's your son? I go, well, he's a 4th grader. I go, what's the age of that?
Yeah. He runs around. This is what he likes to play with. That's how we judge him. Okay, and so what do you, I know you belong to the Colorado Board of Education. Do you have another occupation that you do as well? Are you still with the veterans full time, or what do you do?
So actually what I do a lot more now is I work in the community with a lot of veterans outreach, still continue to do that. I actually retired from the VA and I have a military retirement and a VA retirement. And then I do a lot of community pro bono work in that sense. And I also work in the consulting realm with different educational outreach programs. So I'm always doing a lot of things. I dabble in a lot.
Okay. And here I am being vicious right off the bat.
Go for it.
So, according to various sources, because I know you've said that since you started your campaign, you've had a lot of pushback, and a lot of things have not been true. One of the big concerns for people in the Republican Party that might want to vote for you is Pueblo Chieftain, for instance, said you had switched parties 11 times. How many times have you actually switched parties?
Well, that must have been an old article because they kept changing it every time. They went 11, 12, 13, 14, 17.
I think 18 was the last I saw.
Was 18 the last one?
Yeah, NPR also said you were.
Did they say 18? Yes. So one of the things that happened in Pueblo that's really interesting is about a couple years ago when I ran for Senate, there was a gentleman who ran against me as a Democrat as well. And in that Chieftain article, they also talked about him changing his party 13 times. And one of the things they chalked it up for the Democrat was they said it was a clerical error, that it was a mistake, that something happened in the clerk and recorder's office. But for myself, I didn't get the same grace. They came after me and they said, Mr. Varela's changed his party multiple times. It was a good way for them to attack me. It's part of their dirty politicking. And it's sad and it's unfortunate because what it does is it doesn't help anybody. It just confuses the voter and the electorate. And one of the things that I've noticed we see a lot in that sense is if they say it enough, even though it's not true, it becomes their truth and they hope to confuse us. Mm-hmm. And you're right. Since I did launch my campaign for Congress, the Democrats have become very viciously against me. And I can say one of the reasons why is they know I'm a veteran. I served my country. I did 2 tours. This district is heavily veteran. Also, I'm a Hispanic candidate. And they like to believe that they own the Hispanic population in their vote. And one of the things that we've been able to do successfully in Pueblo is start to flip that Hispanic vote to start getting more and more Republicans elected and Hispanics switching over and running for office. So to them, I'm probably one of their biggest fears because they know that getting into the general, it's going to be hard to beat me.
Okay. Okay, but you didn't answer the question. How many times have you actually changed
yep.
parties?
So I was a Democrat, and then I went from Democrat to unaffiliated to Republican, and I voted in one primary or two when I was a Democrat to vote for Scott Tipton. So back in the day when I worked for the Department of Veterans Affairs as a Democrat, Scott Tipton was a great advocate for veterans outreach, veterans care. You guys have an amazing VA hospital here that he's advocated for, and nothing to take away from Lauren Boebert, because I'm talking, this is prior to Lauren being involved. But one of the things that we were working on heavily with Scott in our communities, we serve 42,500 veterans in Southern Colorado. And Scott was working really hard on trying to get us our own VA hospital in Pueblo. Okay. We were, the uniques that were coming from our clinic were being given to Denver. Denver had the fastest decreasing veteran population in the nation. They only had 23,000, but they got that major VA hospital using our numbers and Colorado Springs numbers. So at that time, there was a lot of us that were really excited for Scott, hoping that he would be able to make that, because it takes your congressman or congresswoman to make that to advocate for you on that level, to run a piece of legislation to help you get that VA hospital. So there was one or two of those primaries that I did support Scott because he was so good with us on veterans issues.
Very good.
So I've always been a conservative and came over when the people were right when I was a Democrat.
Okay. So what did make you change?
I'll tell you, it was right after the Joe Biden election. My wife and I were especially for my wife, it bothered her the most, because if you remember that same year, they had to end the late-term abortions. And my wife had a really nice sign, a couple of them in front of the house. And I used to be a precinct chair for the Democratic Party. I was on their platform committee. I was the chairman of their Latino Democratic Forum. And they had come by our house and they said that we couldn't have that sign. And my wife said, well, wait a minute. Why can't we have that sign? That's crazy. She said, she's pro-life. And she goes, this is my sign, my house. I have the freedom. I serve my country. I can leave it there. And that was the first straw with her. For me, we started to realize that a lot of the policies that the Democratic Party was really pushing weren't our policies. They didn't match our values. They weren't what we believed in. And we are Catholic. And in our community in Pueblo, it's heavily Catholic. In CD3, it's heavily Catholic. And one of the things that we kept talking about was what they were preaching didn't match what we believe in. And we didn't want to raise our kids to be conflicted in that sense, to where how could you be a part of a party that doesn't represent your values? And how, as a man and a wife, are we able to lead our home and have those values not match who we are? So it was, for us, it became a no-brainer to where we said, we're done, we're out of this, we can no longer be a part of that. And it would have been 2021, right after Biden was elected.
Okay.
So I walked away from everything over there.
Well, that's good. I mean,
starting over is always good.
Yeah. That I was a Democrat in college, and I saw, they don't match what I believe in.
No, of course
and
not.
My values are conservative and faith.
Exactly.
And if you don't have those, I don't see how anything that you're proposing is going to be better for the community. Go ahead, Ruth. Your turn.
Well, I had a question, kind of the same thing. Like I say, the hard-hitting, like we said, the hard-hitting questions up front. Then we'll get easier, I promise.
No worries. I appreciate it.
According to various sources, you have run for county commissioner, state senate, head of Republican Party in Colorado. Why do you think you were not elected to any of those positions? And what has changed that will help you win CD3?
So I'll tell you, I never ran for county commissioner. So if you read that in the article, that was like their game that they were trying to play. So when I ran for Senate, the Democrats tried to throw everything at me as much as they could have. And one of the things that, even when it came to running for the state party chair, I never ran a campaign on that. I just talked to one of the papers and they said, would you consider it? Like they're calling around right now when the vacancy happened for Lauren. And I said, you know what, I would consider it. That is something I would be interested in. We put together what they call an exploratory committee. It's not a real campaign committee. It's just a group of people saying, is this the move we want to make? Does it make sense? Is it feasible? Are there other candidates out there that we could support or get behind? Where are we at with it? So we decided to not launch the campaign because it wasn't the right time for me and my family. It's something my wife and I talked about. Now, the commissioner thing, when I ran for Senate, if you look at that, the Democrats had filed a compliance complaint, which says, I think you had a copy of the article somewhere.
Yes, it said that you had $600, that there was an ad in the paper.
But they could never find out where it was, who it was. It was all hearsay. So when do journalists start writing on hearsay, right? Well, it's when they want to create a mailer to go against you as a candidate, because we provided everything showing that I never ran for commissioner, because I would have filed with the Secretary of State. Secretary of State investigated that claim, looked into it, and dismissed it and said that it wasn't a viable complaint, but they still wrote an article on it. So, as you could see, they have been scared of me as a candidate for a very long time.
It's called gonzo journalism, isn't it?
Yellow journalism, for sure.
Yellow journalism, for sure, yes.
So, you serve on the State Board of Education.
Yes, ma'am.
And you were appointed to that a year ago. And I know that you're in the minority as far as being a conservative on that. What do you do in that role? How do you influence education? Because education is such an integral part of what our country looks like.
Yep. Education is huge, because if you educate a generation, you can control your future.
That's exactly right.
And one of the most important things that I do in the State Board of Education is I advocate for parental rights. And that's why I even got involved in wanting to do this role. So when the vacancy came up, I received a call from a few friends saying, hey, Stephen, you've been working on the forefront with education reform for a couple of years now. Would you be willing to get involved and maybe run for this vacancy? And I said, well, as long as people understand that I'm big on education reform, I'm big on parental rights, and it doesn't offend anybody, because I believe that parents should have every decision in their child's school, in their child's life, and that they're in charge of it. And education, in the sense of the school, is just there for the parents and the kids to be educated and nothing else, not to tell them how to grow or live their own lives. One of the things that has been very important for me on the State Board of Education that I've been able to advocate for is those things: more charter schools, promoting homeschool enrichment programs, working across the district and the state with that. We've actually been able to open up a few more enrichment programs to create more parental choice, which is huge in our state. And as one of the candidates who's big on that, there's not many candidates like myself that are actually advocating for that, because it's so important. We miss it when it comes to politics, but it's the last area that Democrats or the other side, the liberal left, has the ability to attack us. Yeah. And we have to make sure that we're ready, we're armed, and that we're fighting for those. And one of the things being on the State Board of Education that makes me unique is I have the ability to say from a parent's perspective. I'm the only current parent on the State Board of Education. And I'm the youngest by 25 to 30 years, and I'm the only one that doesn't live in the Denver metro area. So I advocate for rural a lot. 75% of all of our school districts in Colorado are rural. And not a lot of people understand that, when a lot of the focus is Denver metro. Out of all the state board members, I'm one of the only members that doesn't live in the Denver metro area within 50 miles, and that's huge, because that means we do not have people advocating for our voice. If 75% of our schools are rural, and there's more parents that have rural values, which are faith, family, country, and hard work, why are they not being advocated for up there in the Capitol? So that has been a big thing for me to be able to do, is bring that voice to the State Board of Education. Because sometimes when they try to pass a policy or they want to make a rule or a rule change, I have the ability to say, well, from a parent's perspective. And it really, I think, sometimes helps people understand if they are, fair Democrats, as some of them will say, because we are the minority in the sense out of 9, there's only 3 of us. So you got 6 Democrats. If we're able to say to some of them, well, from a parent's perspective, and we have been able to win some of them over. And when it comes to charter appeals, one of the biggest ones that you could watch live was we were able to win over the Adams 14, and we had a few Democrats come our way, agree with us, and we were able to help that appeal to create choice for those low-income minority families. So it was a huge win for us.
I'm sure it was.
So does the State Board of Education, are they over both colleges and the K through 12?
I'm glad you asked me that, because a lot of people don't know what the State Board of Ed does. So I'll tell you. So State Board of Education in 1949 were one of your 3 constitutional elected boards. Prior to that, the commissioner used to be elected. We're only one of few states in the country that actually the State Board of Ed is elected partisan, and the State Board gets to hire the commissioner. And the State Board does not work for the governor or the legislature. We're an independent body. A lot of people don't understand that. They think that the legislature actually makes the decisions for us or tells us how to operate or function, or the governor. That's why it's so important for us to take, and start really paying attention to education, because we could actually make an impact there. But with that being said, your state board, we don't have a governor as Republicans. We don't have a Senate president or a House Majority Leader or a Speaker of the House. But we have our State Board of Ed members, which makes us your 3 highest elected Republicans in the state of Colorado. Myself, Steve Durham, and Deb Shuffle, which is good in a sense because I get to say that. Right. But in a sense, it's not good because we should have more. We shouldn't be in a super minority everywhere else. But the State Board of Education, when it comes to rulemaking, we actually have a lot of sway and we have a lot of input in what goes on in the districts, even though districts have local control. So this is a very, very important coveted position. And that's why when I was appointed to it, I took it very serious and traveled almost all 27 counties in almost, I think I hit 40-ish, a little bit less, of 52 of my school districts because I believed it to be very important to be engaged.
So, and that is not a paid position, correct?
This is not a paid. I work for free. And I tell people, not only that it's free, I believe I work for the people, because sometimes when folks get paid in some of these positions, they forget who they work for. And then I like to tell people is I'm not a politician, and I get to earn that because I don't get paid for my role, but I get to let people know that I work for them. And it makes people understand more that it's a sacrifice when I'm out on the road, when I'm touring the school, but it's okay because my service didn't end when I was in Iraq. And it didn't end when I came back and I fought for veterans in my community, and I'm still continuing to fight. That's why I tell folks I'm proud to serve again. These positions are selfless service, and we have to start doing that as citizens if we want change.
I agree with that. Yes.
So would you say that those that are on the other side see the importance and they're more willing to serve? Because I say this about every podcast, is it seems like Republicans are a little bit lazy and complacent and think, well, I don't know if it's that they don't think they have a voice, that they can't make a difference, or that they think somebody else will do it.
Well, I think sometimes we have...
Or why do you think that is?
I think our issue even goes back to donating to candidates. If you notice, Democrats will superfund their candidates. You can go and pull it and you're like, wow. Like Adam Frisch, for instance, I think $9 million. And it's crazy to see that from our point of view, our perspective. But the difference is on the Democrat side, they look at that as an investment. They're making an investment in a candidate. As Republicans, we look at it as an expense report. If we can change that and start looking at this as an investment, whether it's an investment in our community, it's an investment in our schools, or it's an investment in a candidate that's going to represent that, until we start thinking that way, it's going to be hard for us to change. And we're not going to see a lot of good people running for those offices because they're going to say, well, I own a business. Or, I'm already well off. I'm a lawyer. I'm a doctor. I'm this. I'm that. I have a company. I don't have time to go to Denver. Let somebody else do it. Well, when you continue to say, let somebody else do it, then we don't have a bench prepared. Then the somebody else sometimes tends to be the other side has the better candidate. And that hurts us. So what we need to start doing is start investing in our future. And it doesn't have to be young. And I say this because when I went to the Republican meeting in Pueblo County 3 years ago, and I got really excited and involved. I remember a lady told me in the audience, she goes, young man, she goes, you just want new blood and you want to get rid of all of us old folks. And I said, no, that's not true. I go, I just want the blood to flow again and you to believe. We don't need new blood. We just need inspiration. And ever since then, we have been inspiring folks in Pueblo County. We have been changing it, and I've been seeing it go on throughout the district. Pueblo's not just my focus. Being CD3, I have worked in every county to try to help the same inspiration happen.
Okay, so specifically, I know that you said that we've changed Pueblo from blue to red. How? How did you do it, and how is it not happening here? What is different about Pueblo and different about the messaging or different about what you specifically do? I want named answers.
Full of multiple questions. So be
sorry.
patient.
Yes.
No, so you know what I'll tell you? What I'll do for you better is I have a presentation that I put on for Adams County, and it's a slideshow that explains, and I'll have to do the same thing for you. I just need to pull your voter data, look at your numbers, look at who's registered, what your registration looks like, and we can do a nice presentation to talk about how you can start this process. And because it's not hard, I'll tell you what we did in Pueblo. It is a lot of shoe leather. It's old-fashioned. We organized a team of people to do multiple different things, and we all came together as a team.
Okay,
we weren't
what
afraid.
Multiple different things
So
did you do?
we had a group of people that were phone banking. We had a group of people that were doing text messaging. We had another group of people that were writing postcards. We had an army of people that were volunteering, that were knocking doors. But we did it strategically. It wasn't just looking at any and every door. It was going after the doors that we knew people would vote our way, because they weren't, and talking to people and not being afraid to engage the other side. Because sometimes you'll run into folks who'll say, well, I don't go knock on Democrat doors if they're a Republican. And it's like, no, we do go knock on Democrat doors. And if you look, there's two systems you could use. It's called Delphi, or you could use I-360, and it gives you a rating of every voter. So you can know if they're a Democrat, if they're higher conservative or lower conservative, and you could start engaging those ones and talking to them and explaining to them your values. And it's a value system. Most people vote their values. And some people are going to say, like, you'll get a Democrat and they'll be rude and they'll say we're blue no matter who and stuff like that. And you just, you move on and thank you for your time. But besides that, you have an opportunity to engage the other ones. You just go for it. You don't stop. On my campaign, when I ran for Senate, we knocked 22,000 doors. And Pueblo was an 11D district. And I only lost by 1.5 points. I had 32,500 and something, and the Democrat, who was an incumbent, who was overfunded and had a lot of soft side money put into it, he had 33,000. He barely beat me by 1,500. That's huge. And that was a lot of shoe leather that we put into that, because you can't be afraid. It's old-fashioned work, which a lot of candidates don't like to do today.
Exactly. Well, you coming over here and being on our podcast, which you don't know, is this going to really benefit me? You're taking the time and you're making that connection with people that are not necessarily, running around being real political.
True.
We appreciate that.
Okay, in that respect, then, I will go back to why you're doing this. What are you going to do to help the interest of not only Western Colorado, but the rural nation as a whole? Specifically, things like our oil and gas, our veterans, our farm and ranch rights. I mean, they are being taken away from. Farm and ranch is going down the tubes fast.
Oh, yeah. And
we need to preserve our farm and ranch. I don't care if you're a Nebraska cornhusker or if you're a Charlet raiser in Mesa, Colorado. It's just, we're losing that ground. What are you going to do to help us?
Yeah, I like that you bring up those three things, because they're very important. And sometimes one of the biggest things that we need to do right away is delineate what's state and what's federal. Because sometimes a lot of us, we get confused because we get used to, I call them the regular old politician that shows up and says they're going to fix all these things when it's not even in their purview.
Right.
And one of the most important things for me to talk about is when it comes to ag and ranching and farming is getting into the role. So I used to serve on a board in Pueblo County for planning and zoning. So I understand land use rights, water rights. We have one of the Fry Pan expansion, which is a major water right away in Colorado. But not only just having that knowledge, but actually getting in there and advocating. We don't get enough of that. And looking at bringing it, like you said, it's a dying, essentially, people aren't getting into the trade. I call it a trade. And that's what we're running into in education. No one's getting into the career and technical education fields anymore. And actually identifying ag in that sense is very important, because that's the first step. When you start looking at it and recognizing it as a career and technical education program, then you'll start energizing the next generation. And a lot of that is building a coalition with local school districts, representing CD3 and fighting in that sense of saying, what is it that your State Board of Ed members? So since I've been in the State Board of Education position, granted, my counterpart, because Lauren, myself, and Glenn Gallegos, we all represent CD3, they're all kind of running their own things. But one of the things I would like to do as a state, when I get elected to Congress, is work with those positions to kind of build that. How do we get more of these career and technical ed when it comes to ag and farming? How do we encourage it? How do we get farmers and ranchers to keep their water rights? What we're running into is developers that are coming in there and buying the water. They're doing land grabs, and we're seeing it. And they're taking it and they're they're running it to Denver to build a development. Or if a farmer or a rancher says, okay, well, wait a minute, my grandson, my granddaughter, or no one in the community is looking to pick up this trade, then I might as well sell the water, or I might as well let the land go. So finding those kinds of ways to create programs to where they get excited to maintain it, keep it, and building that next generation.
I think that's so essential, because I'm looking at the nation in general, from the grape farmers in California to the Nebraska corn growers and wheat growers, and even clear back east, and doing all of the things they do, because they have their agricultural niche as well. And like you say, we're not bringing up anybody that thinks that's of importance. They would rather be sitting behind a computer doing computer work, or they would rather be politicking, if you will, and they don't see the value in keeping what we have. Excuse me. We're going to be a nation starving if we don't.
Well, or commercial.
Yeah.
It's all commercial.
Well, that's important that she says that, because that's what we're seeing. And I try to explain this to folks is they get so confused because they think of the Boulder hobby farm. You know, where somebody has this little, like maybe an acre or less, they have a goat or two and a few chickens, and they think that's farming and ranching, when they don't realize that's not farming and ranching. And then the other things that we're seeing is where we're seeing corporations buy all of our farmland and ranch land, and we're losing that community, because those are, everybody knew they're, like my wife's family, they're from Otero County. Her grandfather, you know, he would go to the sale every Saturday, Wednesday, and on Thursday, and he had a different one that he went to, and they were buying horses and cattle. You don't see that anymore. That's what's missing. And I used to love it before he passed away. He would take my boys with them. They'd throw their cowboy boots, their hat on, and they'd come home and say, Grandpa taught us something. And what did he teach you? Don't look a gift horse in the mouth. But, you know, that's part of our culture of Americanism. That's part of the Western of who we are and what built Colorado. And taking those values to D.C. is so important, because a lot of those congressmen and women and senators, and even our president and anybody up there that represent us, they forgot what it looks like outside of D.C. They don't remember what rural Colorado looks like. And when they get there, I remember you'll hear some of them talk about the swamp. Oh, the swamp, the swamp, the swamp. But I feel like sometimes they get into the swamp and they become part of the swamp. They don't drain it. They become the plug. And we and we have to find people that are willing to go over there where this isn't their best job they've ever had. And that's the problem. We have too many people run for politics where this is the best job, and they get there and it becomes self-preservation. We need people that are going to fight for us no matter what, that they're not going to jump in from a different district. They don't, and I don't mean that in a negative way. Please don't take it that way. But how does somebody who doesn't live in our district know our district? We need people that know our district, live in our district, walk our district, drive our district, know what it means to be part of it, to fight for it. How can I champion an issue in Texas if I don't live there? Or in Oklahoma if I'm not from there? Or in CD5 in El Paso County? I don't know their issues, but I know our issues.
You need to get acquainted with those issues, because where you're going, that's going to be a big part of your job.
It will be a big part.
And you're going to have to grow teeth and fingernails in order to make it work.
And we're going to have to fight. And that's why you need a champion like Stephen Varela. My website is Stephen Varela.
That's fine.
Shameless plug.
We're fine with that. So,
Stephen Varela for Colorado.com.
Okay, we've got that. So do you plan on trying to work across the aisle? And so two-part. And are there any issues you wouldn't be willing to compromise on?
I think working across the aisle is going to be very important, but I think those days, if we remember when Newt Gingrich in the 90s always talked about crossing the aisle, Bill Clinton ran on crossing the aisle. It's okay to cross the aisle when it makes sense, when it comes to rural ag, but at some point, us as conservatives have to stand up. We have to start digging our heels in and not being afraid to be conservative. And that doesn't mean disrupting the system. That means fighting for the people that put you there. And I think that's so important. And yeah, there's sometimes you're going to have a little bit of a compromise. You might have to sign on to a certain bill or something, but if it doesn't match your values or your district, I'm not going to sign on to it. I'm not going to jump on board with it because it doesn't make sense. You know, I think one of the biggest things we hear a lot about right now is the Dobbs decision. You've seen Joe Biden and them are making it a big thing again. They're starting to talk about it because it's back. That's why I say we got to understand the delineation of where and what things are. That's back to states' rights. The Supreme Court ruled on it. Will we see it again in the Congress, or will we see it again in the U.S. Senate? Probably. It's an issue that's never going to die. I've been personally pro-life my whole life. My wife is pro-life. We believe in that, and we're very Christian. But I understand there's going to be some things where people are going to come at us and say, what is your compromise? Or what is that? I don't know yet. I haven't heard what they said. I'm pro-life. It's going to be very hard for me to come off that hill, but I get it. It's not going to be the hill I die on. But at the end of the day, if it's our state's issues, I want to support our state and I want to see what they're doing, and not the Democrat part of our state, our conservatives and Republicans in our state.
What they value.
What they value. Because we can't forget where we came from. And that's the problem that we're running into in politics. We keep forgetting where we came from. People get in there, they say they're conservative, they're going to vote for us. And then when they get up there, you look at their vote record and you're like, well, wait a minute. 2 years ago, you were telling me you were going to do this. And then they show back up for re-election and they're going to say they're going to do it again. And it's just a cycle that never ends.
Right. Okay, so on that then, where do you stand on border control?
Let me tell you, we need to close our borders. I'll tell you, why is that important? Because we have so many people that are coming over that are criminals. And I'm not calling the Mexican Americans, I'm not calling the El Salvadorians, I'm not calling the ones that are trying to come over here the right way criminals. I'm talking about the ones that are smuggling in drugs and killing our kids.
Or just coming in illegally when you need to go through.
Exactly.
If you have an asylum issue, yes.
Yep.
But there are other people that have applied from different countries that have been denied for no reason. And I know a lot of people say, well, why wouldn't I just come through the border
Exactly.
if I can get there?
And it's not fair to the ones that are doing it the right way, especially when they're a doctor, they're a nurse, they're a lawyer, or there's something that's a critical need in our country and they're going through the application process and they're 3 to 4 years into it and then we reward somebody else. No, that is a problem. And it's a problem that needs to be solved. We need to close the border. I'll tell you why, though, too. Is think about it from this perspective. It's almost inhumane that the other side just lets them come over here. They're coming over here with they don't speak our language,
right.
No family,
Right.
no job, no health care. I mean, what are we doing to them? Isn't that inhumane just to bring somebody over here without any resources? It doesn't make any sense. And when the Democrats say we're inhumane for wanting to close the border, that doesn't make sense. Because we're telling them, know a little bit of the language, have a job when you get here, have housing. It's Maslow's hierarchy. Find those needs that you can meet and then welcome to our country. We'd love to have you. But until then, do it the right way. And the right way is the humane way.
Well, I know for years, I'm an old farm kid, ranch kid, I would say. And for years, the Mexican people have been coming across the border with visas to work in our orchards and our farms and dig our potatoes and do all of the work that we can't do because we don't have enough kids or we don't have enough whatever resources to do it. These people come across and they do it the right way.
Yep.
And to me, that is the utmost importance. A visa was put in place for a reason.
Yep.
Work visa. Well, and there are people from other countries that do the same thing.
Of course.
It isn't just Mexicans. Eastern
But that was my experience.
Right.
You're talking about the old Vacero program.
I am.
That's it. So you know about that program.
I
Not
do.
a lot of people know about that. So that was an amazing program of its time. And that's how you got a lot of folks up here. And you have a huge Basque community here because of part of that and the early movement of it. But no, it's important because a lot of them came here the right way. They went through the process. They filed for their visa. They came across the border. They were working. They were productive. Then some of them went back. They didn't stay here. They built their nice, beautiful homes, kept their families there. But what we're seeing right now is these criminals that are flooding our country, that are bringing fentanyl in, that are killing our kids. It's sad. We should never, no mother should ever have to bury their son in their 20s or 30s. That is a shame. That should never be happening. We shouldn't drive downtown and see people that are homeless because they're addicted to drugs. And you know what I tell people that's a perfect example of what the Democratic Party has done to this country. It has robbed our young men and our young women of prosperity. It has dumbed them down to the fact to where they don't want to work because they're on drugs, because the border's open. There is no border security. It's a shame and it's sad.
Okay, so what do you consider to be the top issues that you, in order, I mean, just all the issues that you would like to see addressed?
Yes, one of the biggest things that when I get in there I want to fight is our crime and safety. We have cars that are being stolen. We have people that are being robbed and nothing's being done about it. Homelessness is a huge issue. We have people camping up and down. Some of them are dual diagnosis mental health and some of them are drug-induced mental health. We have to fix that problem. Closing our border. We need to shut our border down. It is scary what's happening. I'm raising kids. They shouldn't have to live in fear in this country that I fought for, that my wife fought for, that my grandfather fought for. It is a shame to see that happening, and we have to fight for this country. And those are three major issues that we got to start fighting for right away: is close our borders, fix our crime, and clean up our streets.
What about inflation?
Inflation is a problem. Less government, lower taxes, more individual freedoms. That is the Republican way. Vote our values.
Yep, that's true. One thing that I think is really important, and I think what you're doing today is a perfect example. How accessible would you be to your constituents? How could they get in touch with you and know, because a lot of times if you go to Hickenlooper, they thank you. I mean, it could be you're saying exactly the opposite. Please do this, vote this way. And you get back, thank you for your input. Yeah. And then you start getting his emails, and he doesn't do anything. They don't really acknowledge.
They have all their handlers kind of taking care of the calls. And one of the things that's my promise, and I've promised it ever since I got into politics, because one of the biggest things that really energized me to get in was I hated that I could never get a hold of a politician. Mm-hmm. It bothered me. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you is I always give my cell phone number out to everybody. It's on even I'll show you, I think I have one with me, my State Board of Education card, which is interesting to pull it out for you guys, is I have my personal cell on there for everybody, and it says personal. And I take calls. I get parents that call me all the time.
And it does say personal.
Yes, I get parents that call me. I get school board members that call me. I get anybody, and I never don't take their call. And if I don't get back to them in a day, I'm back to them via email if they leave it, or I'm back to them in a couple days, because this position is selfless service. It is so important to be able to take calls, to be able to engage with your voters, because like I said, my evaluation of this is whether you vote for me or not. Our evaluation is whether you re-elect the politician or not. I work for you guys. You guys are my boss. And I mean that. And it needs to be that way. We have to give politics back to the people. It has been taken away from us. And it's been taken away from us by these big major donors that give a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And it turns into where it's like politicians are like NASCAR. They got a badge on the back of their jacket. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You almost ask them, and they ask each other sometimes. When I've been to some of these events, they'll say, "Oh, well, I'm with so and so," or yeah, oh, my. And they ask me, "Stephen, how are you? Who are you here for?" I'm here for you guys. My donors, when I run this campaign, I'm on a shoestring budget, and I take it from every single person that would give me $20, $5, $10, because your voice matters more than anybody. When it comes to endorsements, you'll see some candidates will release a slew of endorsements of all these people. Well, that's who's bought and sold them. Mm-hmm. I'm not bought and sold because I work for you. Mm-hmm. I'd rather have your endorsement than John Hickenlooper's or Scott McInnes or any of these major people that are out there. I don't need their endorsement because I work for you guys, and that's what matters.
So how do you, because right now you're saying you don't have the donors that you would, the major donors that are backing you, like the Democratic Party. I'm not saying you, of course, but the Republican side doesn't have that. So how do you run a campaign to be successful against that?
Grassroots. I am a grassroots candidate. Yeah. I believe in the grassroots system because it is what is meant to work. If we are afraid to go through the caucus system, we shouldn't be running. Because if you don't go through the caucus, that means you already know the people that are elected to the precinct captains, precinct chairs, you are disrespecting them and taking their voice away. The whole purpose of this is your First Amendment right to have a voice. And if we're taking that way and not going through the caucus system, that's a shame. I believe, and I came in through the caucus system. That's how I got involved in politics. First thing I did, somebody said, become a precinct chair. I became a precinct chair. They said, go volunteer on a campaign. I started knocking doors because that is the work that gets you ready to understand where you came from. And that's why for me, I give my personal cell number out because I understand that when you can organize your precinct, when you can knock a door, when you can talk to your constituent, when you can do the grassroots way, that is more important than anything. And that's how we're going to raise money. That's how I raised money on my Senate campaign. Interestingly enough, I was one of the few candidates that had more $10, $5, and $20 donors than everybody else. Because it is about believing in what we're doing. Colorado needs a champion. CD3 needs a champion, and that's what I am. I'm your guys' champion. I'm the champion for the grassroots. And I'm not a single issue candidate. I understand there's a lot of problems. Election integrity is a problem.
Yes.
Pueblo County, let me tell you what we had and ran into. We ran into it too. We had a bad clerk and recorder that was horrible. Even the Democrats, there's articles that talked about him. Nobody liked the guy. So you know what we did? We worked our tails off to get a clerk and recorder in there that would work with us, that would allow us to poll watch, that would allow us to be election judges, that would make us a part of the process, and it happened. That was the first step. We got that guy out of there. And you know, when you look back, when it says I changed my party 18, 17 times, when it said my Democrat opponent changed his party 14, 16 times, there's other people in Pueblo County that's happened. That should make us wonder if we believe in election integrity. What was going on? Why were they changing? Why was the clerk's office changing our party affiliations so many times?
Or did they actually change your party affiliation?
It makes you wonder.
Yeah.
It really makes you wonder.
Or is it just a rumor?
It makes you wonder. It makes you wonder.
Very interesting. Well, on that note then, I will ask you, how do you feel about term limits?
You know what? Let me tell you. Term limits are very touchy, and I'll tell you why. Because my personal thing is this. I don't want to do this longer than 8 years. That was my promise to my wife. My wife goes, babe, if you get in there, I don't want you to be a Nancy Pelosi or a Mitch McConnell. She goes, I'm not going to walk you on a podium and whisper in your ear what to say. And I joked, I go, I get it. But, you know, the thing is when you do term limits, and we see this here in Colorado, we got to figure out a way to fix it and work it out, because what ends up happening is the lobbyists become the most powerful people at the Capitol, because what they can do is they can outlast you. So if you have a candidate that they don't agree with, and what I mean by a lobbyist, and these are if you don't know what a lobbyist is, or these special interest groups, when they get up there, they can say, well, you know what, Ruth, I don't like you that much, and so here, you're up in 2 years. I'm going to overfund her because she agrees with me, so they're going to put a whole bunch of money into your campaign and get you out of there because they have institutional knowledge. They've been there 20 years, and we don't know who they are as citizens. We don't know what they're doing, who they work for, who their clients are. That is something we should be afraid of. If we're talking term limits, because we're seeing it here in Colorado, they are the most powerful people in Denver. And the way we change that, I don't know. But the other thing they could do is if you're a candidate and you're there for 8 years and you just got reelected and you don't agree with them and you're the one vote that they need, they just wait you out. And then they go into your community, they find a candidate that agrees with them, and then they put them through a candidate training, a candidate school, they run them for a council, they run them for a school board, they get them ready, they train them, then they come out the gate, and then you get this guy that might have been a lawyer or a lady that's a lawyer that has no interest, no background, never been in politics, has nothing. And then you go, where'd you get all that money? And they're running for an office for council or they're running for legislature. Those are things we should be worried about and be afraid of.
I think I've seen some of that go on.
And what do you do? I mean, I guess you
and
said
I'm not naming anybody. I'm just saying, because you'll see that's what happens.
Right.
And we should be afraid of that because as citizens, we lose our power. Because right now, we have term limits. We just vote the person out. We just have to work harder. We have to organize as a grassroots. And if we want term limits, it's not a problem. We just got to find a way to not let the lobbyists be powerful.
If we could get rid of lobbyists, we would be in good shape. And I would be all for that.
Yes.
Just making a thing.
My cousin was a lobbyist, I know.
And guys, I don't have all the answers. These are my opinions.
Yeah,
right.
Well, that's what we want to know. That's what people want to know. So how are you going to communicate? And no, I'm going to ask you that first. How are you going to communicate with your constituents? Because the thing that I do like that Lauren does is she does do you can call in and what issues are on your mind, and she has a period of time. I thought none of the other people that I know of do that. They say, this is my talking points, or this is my press release, but there's no interaction.
Of course. I do, currently for State Board of Ed, I do a newsletter bi-monthly, and then I engage with my local school board members that are on the board, anybody that has interest in the education side. As I travel the district, anybody that comes to an event, we do a sign-up sheet. So I would be doing the same thing. I would follow the same model. Right now, currently, I do email blasts. I don't know if you guys are delegates or precinct chairs. That's the first list I'm working on. So you might have received my announcement. You'll start receiving more emails of what I'm doing, where I'm at in your community. Please contact me. And that's something that even being on the State Board of Education that I did really well as well. I mean, I can't say that I'm the best at it, but we're always learning, we're always growing. But it's something that I made sure to do. As I did coffee with Stephen, I'd show up at a coffee shop, I'd put an email out to the local party, and actually I invited both sides. I don't just invite Republicans, because it's important if we're going to win over the other side to start bringing them our way, because we can't be the party of division and subtraction. We have to become the party of addition and multiplication. If we're going to bring them over, they need to know that we're not these big bad guys that they label us to be. They need to know that we're people too, and we have issues that we're trying to get across, as they might have the same kind of issues or problems and concerns that they could coalesce and work with us on. It goes back to that Reagan principle of 80-20. And I found that the more I've done this, the more I've had people come over, especially in the Durango area. Democrats go, well, I read an article about you, and I was really concerned, and I didn't, I heard that you were burning books. And I've never burned a book. I told the lady, I go, I've never burned a book. I go, what book did they say I was going to burn? I go, because if it was John Steinbeck, To Kill a Mockingbird, I'd be very upset, because I like those books. And she started laughing, and she goes, it was actually To Kill a Mockingbird. I go, no way. I go, that's a classic. So I think one of the things is just engaging and talking and making myself available will be something that I will continue to do. And I'll still do it now because it's important. I can't be everywhere all the time.
No.
Right. Just like, down in San Luis Valley, there's somebody going, Stephen, get over here, hurry up. I'll be there in a couple days.
Yeah.
Right.
So how is your family reacting to, because I know I worked for a legislator at the state level, and the reading amount that he had every single night, I thought, oh my God, and me, and I'm reading and I'm thinking, I can't even keep up with all this reading that you have. And that's where the reliance on the lobbyists comes, because they say, well, here, let us give you a synopsis of this so you know what's going on.
Yeah, they'll give you the short version.
Yeah. And if it's just our side, what we want.
Yeah.
But how are you preparing for that? Because it is full-time and your family really suffers.
Yes.
You're gone from a bunch. Are you prepared for all this?
No, I am. And I work, and one of the things that I talk to people a lot about is that our faith, we're a very religious family. We're very understanding. And my wife being military as well, because while I was married and we were having kids, I was deployed. I was in Iraq 7, 8, 9, and 10. So we're already, not that in a bad way that we're conditioned for it, but as a family, we're a strong unit and we have a lot of trust. And we understand that there's a lot. When it's our family time, it's our family time. When we're doing this, it's doing this. And it's a really good work-life balance. And it helps. And it works for our family. Now, it might not work for every family. It is hard on people. And you can see that. There's some people that are elected across the country where they're dealing with that, where it breaks up their families. A lot of these politicians, they get into there's divorce. There's, many different things that happen. And that happens to a lot of them. It's not just any single one.
It's a human condition.
It's a human condition. And one of the things that I believe, and I always joke, is my wife's, she actually graduates here pretty soon. She's a psych nurse, and she'll be a psych nurse practitioner.
Oh, nice.
I'm a clinical social worker. So we have a good open dialogue, and we're always engaging with each other. So there's never, I always tell her, if there's something that's bothering, let me know. So we do have a very open dialogue, and that's important. And open communication.
Good.
Excellent.
You have changed because, like I said, when you read just what's available on you,
Yes.
it is an entirely different perspective. Wouldn't you agree, Ruth?
Oh, I definitely agree with that.
And you know that based on, so how can you get more of yourself in newspapers and media that make a difference? Do you have a plan to do that?
Yep, I do. And one of the things I'll tell you guys that I think what's happening with a lot of our Republican voters, which is really good, the more the left liberal media attacks, the more our conservatives are saying, okay, wait a minute, we got to really look into this. So I just encourage people to look at my website, but they're going to do it to every conservative candidate.
Yes,
we see it across the state.
Right.
It's not going to just be me. But when the Democrats are threatened by a candidate, that's the candidate they go after the most. Right. And you'll see it. Like when I jumped in, I mean, we had a guy that goes by an alias. It's not even his real name. He's done this to multiple candidates out of Pueblo County for, I think, the last 6 years. He sent like a hate email about me. Then he opened up a website and makes you wonder who funded him. Then there's another website. They just keep them coming because their fear is that they can't beat me in a general. So that's good for me. I just got to make sure I get it out to our Republican voters that we can really win this. And that's how Democrats pick their candidates, because they have the media as a machine. They can use it to say, well, we're going to beat up on this guy and we're going to hope this guy makes it through or this lady makes it through because we can beat her, but we can't beat him if we create enough doubt in the party. And that's why if you look at their conditioning, they condition the Democrats to boo no matter who. Because they know if we were to attack them that way, they already know the toe of the line. We have to start working on understanding that we get the right candidate, we're going to support that candidate, and we need to stick with them and not listen to the noise, and that's how we win.
And one last question from me, because our time is getting short. I would like to know how you feel about our men in blue.
Oh, I back the police no matter what. My nephew's a police officer. And one of the things that's very important is that we do back the blue. And it's sad what's going on right now in our state with qualified immunity being removed from them. Are you guys familiar with that? It's really scary. Nobody wants to go into the profession.
No.
Because they can be sued, they can be attacked, they're liable for anything that goes on. Criminals have more rights than us law-abiding citizens, and it's sad. And that's why today we're not getting enough police officers, and nobody wants to go in that profession. And they're being scared from it. Because
they're nationwide.
Oh, and in the schools, the kids are being taught by some of these certain radical teachers in certain districts that the cops are the enemy. That's not true. Our police officers are a service to us, and we need to support them. We need to back the blue, and we need to get that message out to everybody that we need more and more police officers and more people to get in the profession, and more of our legislators to roll that back and bring qualified immunity back for our our police officers here in Colorado.
Great. One last controversial question. Okay, one of the things that I saw, and it was from NPR.
Okay.
It said, in 2020, you founded a political action committee, Rural Colorado 2020, that campaigned against Lauren Boebert. Why?
So it's called Rural Colorado United, and anybody can look that up. So Rural Colorado United was started by a group of us veterans. Remember I told you we supported Scott Tipton? So one of those big things was this was before Lauren was even in the race when we got it going, is the inception and the concept of it was we wanted to bring every rural county and CD3 together to create a rural voice, like what you guys were talking about. How do we get our voice out there? How do we connect? How do we get our elected congressman or woman to start listening to us and know who we were? It wasn't a partisan effort. It wasn't a Republican or a Democrat, because it was a pure nonprofit or a pure nonpartisan. After I left that organization, it did go more far to where they went after Lauren as a candidate. And I think a lot of that happened because a lot of the Scott Tipton staffers that were on his team started to join that organization. And they were, and I'm guessing, I'm only making assumptions, that because there were some of them that were working with it, and they might have, started to go against, because, they lost their election but I was gone by that time. I wasn't a part of it anymore. But when we started it and we got it going, we were excited about what it can do. And I was there to help out Scott because he was doing a lot of things for veterans, which is going to be an important thing for me as a congressman when I get elected, is that we start doing this. Because our district has so many veterans, access to care is huge. We have people that are still trying to get into clinics, still trying to use the I think it's community care option. Community care is not paying or reimbursing some of these clinics that are seeing these veterans. And that those kinds of things matter, and those are the people we have to fight for. And those are some of the things that we were talking about with Rural Colorado United that Tipton was doing for us, or talking about doing for us. So it's bringing that back is what I want to do now. But at that time, it wasn't an anti-Lauren thing. But it did turn into one later, so to be clear.
Yeah.
And I wasn't part of it at that time.
Yeah. But that's not what was reported, so that's why I wanted to clarify.
Yes,
Right.
no, exactly.
Okay. You've been listening to Mesa County Compass. We appreciate Steve Varela for being here. This is the truth as we see it, the facts as we know them. You decide.
Thank you, guys.